Hello, everyone. Welcome to Brilliant but Lazy. I'm Alan.
I'm Josh, and I guess we've kind of been a little lazy. I feel like New York Comic Con was just the other day, but we're into November now, and we haven't talked for a bit. So I'm happy to be back talking to you, buddy.
Yeah, New York Comic Con, I think, wore me out to the point where I had the episodes ready, and then I just never sent them to the head honcho here at Victims and Villains. So we finally got our New York Comic Con episode out. So if you missed that, go back and check that out on the YouTube page or in our podcast feed. And we have one more that's going to drop after this one, so stay tuned for that. But yeah, we're back and we're brilliant now. Like, we're brilliant again. We're no longer lazy, because we're not going to talk about just one thing today. We're going to talk about two things, because something weird happened this weekend where there were two new Marvel properties to watch on the same day. And
that's right.
Yeah. So I got my Marvel setup all done. I got my Hawkeye poster up. I got my Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special up. I decorated for the holidays. So
yeah, I like it.
So without further ado, we're going to start things off with our review of the Marvels. And then we're going to move on to our review of Loki Season 2. So stay tuned for Loki Season 2 if you're interested in that and not the Marvels. And we're gonna do both spoiler free to begin with. So when we get into spoilers, you will know. So with that being said, let's move on to the Marvels. This is the sequel to 2018's Captain Marvel, starring Brie Larson, Tetonah Parris, and Vellani. Iman Vellani. Yeah, there we go. And Samuel L. Jackson. Now, I think going back to what we said before about being lazy, we never did a proper review of Secret Invasion, did we?
I don't really feel like we did. I think we were both like devastatedly disappointed in it, and just kind of didn't have the energy to just talk about it.
Yeah. Going into the Marvels, Secret Invasion left me worried. It kind of hindered this movie for me going into it. Like, I don't like if that's what they're doing with Nick Fury now. Like, I don't know if I want to see him in another movie. But the Marvels came out this weekend, and he plays a part in that, just like he did in the first film of Captain Marvel. I saw this opening day. Josh, I think you saw this opening night.
Yeah, I saw it Thursday night. Yeah.
Okay. What were your overall impressions with the Marvels?
Well, I didn't really know what to expect. I wasn't oblivious to kind of the online chatter, both leading up to this film and just around the last week. I think there was a lot of negativity surrounding this. Then again, there was a lot of negativity surrounding the first Captain Marvel film. And, I'm not going to try to say that just because it crossed $1 billion means it was a good film, because a lot of films do that, and I wouldn't consider them great films. But I didn't despise Captain Marvel as much as most people. And I didn't despise it. First of all, I'm a big Brie Larson fan. I know she said some things that pissed off some people in an interview. But I tried to just go into that film. And I think I probably think of it more fondly now than I did back then. But I do remember liking parts of that film. So I wanted to go into this film with the hopes that it was good. I didn't think it would be. But I enjoyed parts of Miss Marvel. I didn't really care for Monica Rambeau's character in Wanda, but I hoped maybe they fleshed her out a bit. And I enjoy Brie Larson. I think she's a great actress. So I didn't go in with the mindset that I'm going to hate watch this film. And my non-spoiler thoughts are the first third, maybe almost the first half of this film, I really enjoyed. I thought it had a strong start. I thought there was some fun choreography. I thought the mechanics of some of the action scenes were great. There was an interesting way that they were tying this in to the end of the last Captain Marvel movie, and I appreciated that. And I thought maybe I'm actually going to really enjoy this film. And then the longer the film went on, the more it kind of fell apart on the screen, whether that was a story that was dissolving into itself, special effects that were clearly not finished, and then just, things that I had heard about reshoots and rewrites that were all apparent on the screen. And by the end of it, I didn't think the film was the worst film we've ever seen in the MCU, but I did feel like it was a mess. I still enjoyed the overall concept, and I do believe there are worse films in the MCU, but this definitely felt like a mess, like a lot of things coming out of Disney are these days.
Yeah. There's a moment in the movie that I can pinpoint exactly, and we'll talk about this in spoilers. There's a moment where I'm like, oh, I don't know if I like this anymore. But I agree with you. There's a lot of things that I do like about this. Overall, I enjoyed the film. It does have some issues in the middle, which we'll get into. But I think you hit the nail on the head with the choreography. Like, one of the biggest nitpicks that people have been doing towards Marvel for years now has been you can't follow the fight choreography because it's just punch, cut, punch, cut. But the choreography in this was so well done and so well edited that you could follow everything. And you had to, because the way everything was so confusing with the three of them switching powers. Like,
They could have used that as a crutch, saying, well, it's not one-on-one, it's three that are constantly doing this thing, and that just makes it harder to understand. And yet it really was fun to watch at times. So that did impress me. I agree with you.
But even story-wise, there were things that they pick up on from the first film that I enjoyed. Because I wasn't sure how much of that they would actually do. And then they did it. Sorry, my video screen's going crazy here for a second. I don't know what's going on. There we go.
You're good on my end. Yeah.
And then the other thing that I liked was I was a little bit more charmed by Ms. Marvel than you were, I think is fair to say. And I think Iman Vellani in this is fantastic.
She is.
The chemistry between the three of them is very wonderful. There's a really good dynamic between each of them because they each have their own history with each other, with Monica Rambeau kind of being the outlier for Kamala Khan. But I think the three of them working together and the way they build their skills together and they train together a little bit, like that montage where they're figuring out this power switching thing, I thought was fantastic. I think Nick Fury in this is a lot of fun, which is not a Nick Fury that we really got to see in anything, yet alone Secret Invasion. It does.
Go ahead.
No,
finish your thought.
No,
I was gonna say, finish your thought.
I don't know what my thought was. So
okay. Well, on the topic of Nick Fury, well, first of all, this movie in general brings in the most elements of the streaming Marvel properties than we've ever seen before. Between Monica Rambeau, between Miss Marvel, and also you can't help but think about Secret Invasion and Nick Fury. And Secret Invasion's Nick Fury and this Nick Fury are not the same Nick Fury. And whoever, I hate to be the guy that says, well, back in the day of Marvel, continuity mattered. And there were people, and I get it. It was smaller back then and it was easier to manage. But things like the tone of a character mattered back then. And now it just seems like in this kitchen, you have old, grumpy, pissed off at everybody, might burn the world down Nick Fury. That's still kind of a threat. And over in this kitchen, you have sassy old black man Nick Fury, that just has a joke and a one-liner every 5 seconds. And yeah, he pulls a trigger now and then, but I was like, pick a lane for Nick Fury, you know, like if anything, he used to be the constant, you know, like, I miss those days. It was such a stark contrast that I was like, this is weird.
Yeah, it really was. And we'll get into that. Like I have idea about why that is going into spoilers then, but I would much rather see this version of Nick Fury than what
if that's the case. Then just be consistent from here, but pick a lane. You know?
Completely agree.
And it did kind of confuse me as to where Secret Invasion was with this movie. Because is this him happy post Secret Invasion? Because he was pretty down and in the dirt. Or does something happen after this movie and he's more down? I was kind of confused. I don't know if you knew clearly where this falls with Secret Invasion. But I
would assume at this point everything's in chronological order unless they're like, hey, it's the 1950s.
Yeah. I'd also assume that Kevin Feige just wants us to forget about Secret Invasion and it might just fall off Disney Plus one day and never return.
Yeah, I mean, there are things that are happening behind the scenes at Marvel that I think we talked about in our New York Comic-Con episode. Or at least we did talk about at Comic-Con, like the way they're changing the way Disney Plus shows are ran and doing a showrunner and doing pilots and making sure that there's a show Bible before they go into production so they know where the show's going and what the tone's going to be and how it fits into everything. That's something they should have been doing from the get-go. And I think Secret Invasion was really the nail in the coffin for the way they were doing Marvel shows up to this point.
Yeah, well, since we've talked last, and we don't have to do a deep dive into that because we're supposed to be talking about the Marvels, but who wrote that article? Was that a Variety article or a Vogue article that came out in the last 2 weeks that just talked about how there's a lot of stuff going on at Marvel right now? Do you remember?
I think it was Variety.
Okay, so that happened after. Is it Variety? It must be. That happened.
Yeah.
It's one of the two. It happened after New York Comic-Con, so we haven't really had time to address that. But between that and the recent South Park Panderverse episode, there's been a lot of public criticism of Marvel, and I'm sure that didn't help the debut of this new Marvel movie. I'm sure a lot of people were, keeping that in mind when they decided whether or not they were going to buy tickets.
And I think, and we're going to talk about this more later with Loki, I think there's an expectation with Marvel things since Endgame that there's going to be something groundbreaking and world-changing in every Marvel property. Mm-hmm. The Marvels is just a fun movie. Like, it reminded me a lot of the first Guardians movie where it still has heart, but it's also a lot of fun. I miss those movies. Like, I don't always want like a heart-wrenching scene like you get in Guardians 3. Like, I don't need a whole movie I don't need to be crying at a Marvel movie every time I go to the theaters.
Sure.
I want them to be fun, and that's what this was for me. Like, it was a lot of fun. I may not be the audience they were going for with a few things in this because they do make some choices that I thought were weird and we'll get into in spoilers. But I do think that this is a fun movie. And I think beyond that, I think it had one of the more interesting Marvel villains that we've had in a long time because they do a lot of sympathetic villains, but this one felt different to me, and I don't know why, but I kind like you really understood her motivations behind what she's doing. Wrong as it is, like killing one planet to save another. Like, she had a purpose, and it was very clear. Like, that's not always clear with the villains. Like, if you go back to Secret Invasion, don't know what his end game was, but it didn't pan out.
Well, yeah, if you were to look back at the history of the MCU, I would think that their villains has always been one of their weaker things. Out of all the villains they had, there's a handful that were amazing and the most were forgettable.
Yeah.
I personally feel like Darbin, played by, I don't know how to pronounce her first name, Zawe Ashton. Miss Ashton, I thought... I honestly feel like this villain falls more into the forgettable basket, and I think that the order of how we learn things in the film probably did a disservice to the villain, and I'll get into that in spoilers. I think had this film been edited a little differently and things revealed to the audience a little differently, she might have been a better villain. Okay. And I also think that there are things... with regards to her power set and some of the things involved in this, that I was waiting for the whole movie for something else that we've recently seen in the last couple years in Marvel theater that has to do with accessories that I thought was going to be plugged into this movie as well. And when it wasn't mentioned at all, I was like, that's kind of weird. So I think... I had a good time, too. That's my non-spoiler reaction. I had a fun time. I don't think it's a great film. I think it drops the ball on a lot of stuff, and I do feel like this was kind of an editing mismatch thing that they probably spent way too much money on this and then just said, throw it together so we could get it on the screen. And it probably needed some more work, and it probably needed some more love up front, and that's why they had to dump so much money and time into it. But...
I also wonder how many reshoots they missed out on because of the actor strike.
I'm sure that was a thing as well. And this isn't the first film to do that, you know, the latest Mission Impossible had a lot of issues with strikes and with COVID and with everything. And so I sympathize at that level, but I do feel like this had some holes in it that could have been fixed. But at the same time, I would probably watch this again before something like Black Widow or Thor Love and Thunder, or, you know, some other property. So I don't agree with anybody that says this is the bottom of the barrel, but I do agree that this does show some of the, man, they're just kind of slapping it together these days, and they don't have the love and attention that the Marvel used to have. I'll agree on that point.
Yeah. So I think at this point, we should rank the movie like we do here on Brilliant but Lazy. Brilliant or lazy? I'm going to fall under brilliant, but there are some things in the middle that I just can't get past that kind of take me out of the movie. I think that overall it's a very fun movie, and I think this is something that Marvel's been missing for a while now, especially with Secret Invasion and the complexness of Loki. I think this is a fun movie for kids. And I think the first thought I had when I walked out of the theater was like, I might go to Virginia and take my 7-year-old niece to see this because I think she'd like it. And that's what these movies should be. These movies should be fun. They should be enjoyable popcorn flicks, and they don't always have to be dire and depressing and super confusing with multiverses and different versions of characters. Like, it's a fun movie. It's not the best. There are some issues with it, but I had fun. Okay. How about you?
Well, I believe that no matter what this film was going to be, and no matter who wrote it and who directed it, it was going to fail. I think there are enough people that wanted it to fail when they announced they were going to do a sequel. They wanted it to fail when the last one did well. I think there's still people who are butthurt about something Brie Larson said in whatever year that was, 2015, 2016, who knows? I don't think this film was ever going to do well. So it might be the lowest box office debut of any MCU film ever, which is what an article title I just read. But I don't think that's necessarily because of the actual film itself. I think that was bound to happen because of X, Y, and Z factors leading up to this. I will reverse it and say that it was lazy, and that I think the latter half of this film has a lot of problems technically and not. But I still had a relatively good time. I didn't walk out of this pissed like I walked out of other Marvel films that I don't want to get on to talk about. I'm not saying I'd necessarily see it again, but there were aspects of it that I really did enjoy and that I think that they did well and that I want to see built on later. So reversed, brilliant, but still had a good, or I'm sorry, lazy, but still had a good time.
Okay. I think that's the first time we've had that on this show. So with that being said, we're going to get into spoilers here for the Marvels. So if you're here for the Loki review, check the description below to see the time code to jump to. And that being said, we're going to jump into spoilers for the Marvels. I think the biggest, there's one thing that connects the spoiler things I want to talk about, and it's music. Because they do some weird things with music in this. That one of them, I was like, this seems kind of pandering. And the other one, I'm like, this is weird, but I've seen weirder. So what the point in the movie where it kind of drops off for me is when they go to the water planet where everyone sings, and then suddenly Brie Larson is a Disney princess. Is that where it dropped off for you too?
No.
Okay.
The longer that scene went on, I remember thinking to myself, I should hate this more. I'm not saying I was enjoying it, but I remember having this like moment in the theater because it was just me and like one other person in that screening. And, I just remember thinking, had this been in a James Gunn film, everybody would be talking about how amazing this scene is. And the fact that it's not, people are going to hold it against this film. I'm not saying it's a great scene, but I thought it was weird. I thought it was fun, and I thought it was short. I actually kind of enjoyed it. Yeah. And the whole Disney princess thing, I feel like you could take it as an FU to some people, or you could just take it as they just went that much step farther into this. But it was over quickly. And then the whole bilingual thing, like it didn't go on too incredibly long. Yeah. And I thought it was weird, but I thought it was fun. Yeah.
I don't get me wrong. I had fun with it. It was just a moment. It was like, this is a very weird choice. And when I told my wife, the first thing I told my wife when I came home, because she didn't see this with me, I was like, the musical number was weird, and I don't know why she was dressed as a Disney princess. She was like,
but she was a princess in the scene because he was a prince. So
no, and it works. Like I think you're right. If this was in a James Gunn movie, people wouldn't be questioning it. But I thought it worked. I just thought it was a weird choice. The weirder part was the use of cats, which makes perfect sense with the Flurkins, but I did not expect the climax of this movie to be set to memories from cats. The Flurkin thing was kind of spoiled for me in the theater lobby because they had the giant eggs things that you could buy with a Flurkin in it. I'm like, so,
really?
Yeah. So I was like, really? So that's what we're doing now. Okay. So once those things started showing up in the sword base, I was like, okay, those are just Goose's eggs. But the whole end sequence with everyone being eaten by cats was bizarre for me. But the choice of soundtrack was odd, but it fit, and it was very awkward but funny.
Well, and that's what most a lot of movies do that, and a lot of Marvel movies do that, and it's fun sometimes, and it's eye-rolling other times. And James Gunn does that obviously a lot. That's a big mechanic of his Guardians of the Galaxy films.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes it works, sometimes it's so weird and you're just like, this is weird and it works. And other times it's just like, oh, this is a weird scene. Let's put a nostalgic song to it and maybe it'll vibe with certain people. The Flurkin thing really did feel like, somebody saying, okay, so many people hate Captain Marvel, but it made over $1 billion. Let's list a couple things that we think people loved from that film, and then let's quadruple down on those things. And somebody in the room said, the cat. And so the answer to that was, let's make so many of those cats in this film.
Yeah.
And not necessarily because it's going to make the film better, but let's just do it. And that's what they did. So, yeah. Yeah, that's my only answer for why that was there. I didn't hate it. I thought, oh, this is interesting, the whole swallowing everybody and whatnot. But yeah, I think what's more interesting about this film is, and there's that Variety article shed some light onto it, but this isn't the first time Disney has brought on board somebody that doesn't have much of a resume to do a big tent film. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's certainly not the first time in the Marvel franchise. They did it in Star Wars as well. And it always seems to go down like you think it will. Like, I just looked up the director. This movie is written and directed by Nia DaCosta. And she's got the Candyman movie that came out a couple years ago. She's got a film with Tessa Thompson that came out in 2018. And she's got a podcast on her resume. That's it. And she's got a movie coming up with Tessa Thompson called Hedda. And that is Disney's excuse for how the film turned out, because she went and started working on that other film. Her rebuttal or excuse is that she didn't feel like she had enough creative control over a Marvel film, so she just started getting her attention onto this other film. Either way, this definitely felt like it was in the hands of someone that could have used some help.
Yeah, and I think there's just been so much going on at Marvel that they need to figure out what their behind the scenes organization is like. Like, how are we going to structure everything? How are we going to keep track of the stories? Like, Kevin Feige can't do it all at once, and I think he's been struggling with it, and it's showing. I will say one of the things that the movie does very well is deal with the relationship between Monica and Carol, because that was one of the things from the first film that I was very excited to see them address in the sequel once they started teasing it in WandaVision. Mm-hmm. And I think they did a very good job of dealing with the trauma of, hey, I'll be right back, and then 30 years later, oh, hey, I'm back.
Yeah, let's talk about the three leads. But yes. I do appreciate what you said about Kevin Feige, and having just watched the end of Loki, I feel like Loki season 2 is an allegory for Kevin Feige and the MCU universe to an extraordinary extent. But the three main leads of this, I want to talk about Brie Larson first. Yes. I love Brie Larson. I'm not a Brie Larson defender or obsessed fan or anything, but I do like her a lot. And I don't know if this was just a choice of hers or not, but she's ripped in this film. Like, she's toned and ripped. And there isn't like a Chris Pratt Guardians of the Galaxy 1 scene, where he takes off his shirt and just flexes and you're like, oh, there's all the creases and the muscles and everything. There's not a scene like that. But she is so toned that she'll just be wearing casual clothes and you can just be like, damn, she's got abs. And yeah. I don't know if she just chose to do that, but she was rocking it in this. She definitely looked like she was a superhero. I don't know enough about her character to know if she's like immortal or something, but apparently people never question why she hasn't aged in 30 years, because she looks exactly like she did before. There's no wear and tear on Captain Marvel. She's just there. And I thought that maybe that was going to be a mechanic in the 30 years thing, that because she doesn't age, or she ages so slowly, maybe she just didn't see time like everybody else. But no, that wasn't necessarily the case. It's just she got busy for 30 years. Yeah. And but I did like her in this film. I thought she was the, where we're getting these actors from the streaming show, she was the connecting tissue with the movie. And I appreciated her in the film. Like, I've heard other people say that she's one of the lower points of the film, and I don't understand why that is. I thought she was just fine in the role. I wish there was parts of her, and since we're talking spoilers, there was parts of her story arc that tied back into the first film. They actually kind of did a recap at the beginning of this film, which Marvel doesn't necessarily do very often, which was appreciated. But this is what I was talking about the disservice to the villain. We find out much later in this film that after the events of Captain Marvel, Brie Larson went back to that, is it Kree planet?
Yeah.
And Kree. took out the superior mind thing that was holding her back, and just obliterated it. And then that just fucked the entire planet for the Kree, and gave her the nickname of the Annihilator. She might have been destroying something that was messing with her head and torturing her and keeping her contained, but by doing so, it slowly over 30 years destined this whole race to die. And I really appreciated that, but I kind of think it would have been better if the movie had opened with that instead of where it was placed. I feel like that would have been a stronger opening, and then maybe a little more time on how Dar-Benn was there at the beginning and then built up this need to be the savior of her people and avenge her race. And I just think by the time we got it, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. But I don't feel, I feel like she could have been stronger if that was building up over the movie.
I kind of picked up on where they were going with it, because they show her in that flashback, they show her destroy it. And how it, like, and I picked, once they start calling her Annihilator, I was like, okay, so she's the reason that their whole planet's dying.
I put it together as well. I just think they could have.
They didn't present.
They could have edited better. Yeah.
No, I get that. That worked. Yeah.
What did you think of Brie Larson in the film?
I thought Brie Larson was great. I think she was ripped in the first one as well. But she was in those Captain Marvel suits most of the movie. In here, you get to see her in a little bit more street clothes. Especially in like the training montage and when they're on the ship just between battles. So you get to see it a little bit more. And I thought her performance was good. I had never had a problem with Brie Larson. I don't entirely understand why everyone does. I can think of several conversations I've had in the last week where it's like, yeah, I'm going to go see the Marvels. Oh, I don't like Brie Larson, so I'm not going to go see that. Like, but why? Like, what's the reason? I thought she did a good job of leading the movie. I feel like for being the lead of this, like if Captain Marvel's the lead, I feel like she didn't have much to do in this. Like, I feel like Iman Vellani kind of was the star of this.
Yeah, she's the center point for sure. Yeah, this could have been her film, honestly.
And I think it kind of was. Like, I think they did a great job in casting her for Ms. Marvel, the series.
Yes.
Knowing that this is where they were going with the character. There were things that they left hanging mystery-wise from Ms. Marvel that they address in this, one of them being the bangle. And I feel like they did such a good job of This is the first time that, like, this movie is very reliant on the Marvel shows on Disney Plus, but it's also the first time where I'm like, you don't have to watch all of Ms. Marvel to understand this movie, and you don't have to see WandaVision to understand Monica. Like, I feel like you could just go into this movie blind without knowing those two characters, and then go back and get their story later.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like they could do a good job of establishing the characters on their own in this film very briefly, because they could spend a whole half hour doing that. But it's like, nope, 5 minutes. We know who they are. We're moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. I want to talk more about Miss Marvel, but I want to talk about Monica Rambeau first.
Yeah.
Monica Rambeau is the daughter of Captain Rambeau, and she's the daughter of Maria Rambeau. We see her in WandaVision. I thought there were some issues with how she was written and portrayed in WandaVision, and I didn't like her arc. And when she's going to be in this, I was like, well, maybe the big screen treatment will write her a little better. I still don't think she was that great in this film. I'm not saying she was the worst part of this film, but like, and it's not even a streaming thing, because I feel like Iman Vellani was great in the film. I just don't think Monica Rambeau transferred as much. And I think it hurts the character that the actress that plays her mom, I want to see more than the character that's alive. Like, I think Lashana Lynch is a crazy great actress, and everything I've seen her in, she's been fantastic. The latest Bond movie, she's phenomenal. You know, I want to see more of her, and I feel like we kind of got robbed in that she's the character that they let go of, and we get her daughter, which just hasn't been written that well. And I just don't think, like, other than the fight mechanics, I just think she was one of the weaker elements of the trio.
What I enjoy about her character in this is how they deal with that that niece aunt relationship of, oh yeah, you said you'd come back and you never did. But
I felt that could have been written better, because at some points she just felt like the annoying person that was avoiding the scene. Once they described it, I was like, I understand why this would be traumatic, but I don't think it was presented well enough, because it could have been presented better. I guess.
Think there were Easter eggs of it, the way it was presented in WandaVision, that built into this as well.
Yeah, she didn't want to talk about it.
Yeah, she didn't want to talk about it. And I was satisfied with how they wrap that part up, like how they addressed it in this, because it's one of those things where I was like, I don't know how the movie's going to handle this, because they could drop the ball on it. And I was sat like, since that was part of the movie that I was looking forward to the most, I was happy with the conclusion they came up with, like the way they handled it.
Okay.
So,
Iman Vellani makes the final part of the trio, and I know a lot of people still haven't seen Miss Marvel. Maybe they just felt like the cultural disconnect. They wouldn't be able to enjoy it. I remember enjoying it. I think kind of the way it wrapped up was maybe a little disappointing, and I wanted more out of it. But this was the more that I wanted. I thought she was great. I thought the things she's learned since that, with her fight mechanics. The things she does when she's falling from the atmosphere, like it could have been much more of a fish out of water than it was. And I think she adapted well. And this is kind of the first time that I want to see more of her. Like, there's teases in this to the Young Avengers, and I've always kind of been wary of that, because I just don't really want that. But at the same time, she was great in the film. And we've been getting a lot of the kid versions of characters in a lot of Marvel films lately. And I've told you how I'm not really on board for that. Love annoyed me. I think the only one that I really kind of liked was America Chavez. Is that her name? The Star Girl from
Doctor Strange.
Yeah, I thought her power set was interesting, but we haven't seen a lot of those characters for a while. And but Miss Marvel, I like, and I think she did well in this film. And I liked her naivety and her excitement for the team. And I liked that she wasn't useless, and that she wasn't useless from the beginning. Like, it wasn't like she was the annoying third tag along until the end when she gets her confidence. She pretty much held her own from the beginning, and I appreciated that.
Because they're all confused, and I think that them all playing into that confusion and the chaos of it helps it. Because if you had her just being confused and then Brie Larson just kicking ass, it would have been weird.
Yeah.
I think they made a great use of her family. Like, I don't think they were in it too much. I don't think they were in it too little. I think they were there just the right amount.
Unlike Blue Beetle, which I think was too family oriented, this was like it could have got annoying, but it was enough, and I did like it. Yeah.
I still need to watch Blue Beetle. I haven't gotten around to it yet.
Do you though? Do you?
I do. I'm a completionist for our top 10 of the year. Like, I definitely have to do that.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
So Darbine, the villain, I wanted more build up for her. I think she could have been better. A lot of people are calling her who's the other Kree that had the hammer from Guardians 1?
Ronan the Accuser.
Yeah, so a lot of people are calling her Dollar Tree Ronan, and honestly, like, I wanted more. Like, I think the ingredients were there to make her a stronger villain than she was, and I think a little better editing, maybe a little more time spent on her character and what she had to go through, and maybe a little more of the suffering of the Kree would have been better, because I understand why Brie Larson wanted to destroy that AI machine thing, whatever it was. I still kind of don't understand how destroying that, which kind of led their military aspects, destroyed the rest of the world. And I think if we'd focused a little bit more on that, I could have felt and liked the villain a little more, because what we got wasn't terrible, but at the same time, like, she was just like the female Ronin with a grill, and I mean, I wanted more.
From what I picked up from the film, the way it's presented is the explosion of the Kree Supreme Intelligence destroyed the sun, which then they killed the sun slowly, and then that killed the planet over 30 years. That's what I understood it as.
I get that, but I think it could have been presented better.
I think they did a good job of presenting what the Bengals were for, with creating the jump points that we've known since Guardians of the Galaxy 2. I think is when they first introduced
I
that
wonder,
system.
Was that always the plan? I kind of wondered that, because that's a big connection. Like, I was like, that's what these are?
They've been using those jump points since Guardians 2, so it makes sense. I'm glad that she has both of them now. I think Ms. Marvel getting her scarf on the water scene planet, I think that was some of the best fighting that I've seen, in the best fights in this movie is with that scarf.
And I haven't read a lot of Miss Marvel comics, but I knew enough to be like, oh, the scarf, here we go. Like, I knew enough about that. That was cool.
I feel like they didn't do a lot with her. I still wish she had the stretching powers instead of the light stuff. But if they wanted her to have the light powers to connect her to these two characters, it makes sense.
It makes sense for the mechanics of this. Yeah. And maybe she'll get some of her other power sets later. Who knows?
I'm sure she will. But the jump points as kind of the MacGuffin in this, and the thing that they have to fix at the end, and where that puts Monica Rambeau is, I had spoiled before the movie.
Oh, I didn't.
Sadly.
I
had avoided everything about this movie. I hadn't seen it. I saw like the first teaser trailer, and that was it. I was avoiding TV spots, and then I'm scrolling through TikTok, and I see the post-credit scene, and I'm like, oh. But so all I'll say about the my first thing I'll say about the post-credit scene is, if I had a nickel for every character from the early 2000s, Kelsey Grammer has played again in 2023, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice.
For sure. Let's talk about the finale of the film.
Yeah.
I liked the battle. I liked that. Well, first of all, the jump points, they were a little different in this film than they were in Guardians 2. Because I remember when they were going through multiple jump points at a time, in Guardians 2, they started doing the whole face warp thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they've just retconned that or if this was a different version, because they were doing multiple jump points pretty smoothly in this film. And I couldn't help but think about that. Maybe it was just the speed.
I think it was the speed, and it was probably the ship. I feel like Captain Marvel's ship's probably a little bit more sturdy than whatever the Ravagers had.
Probably. So I'll let that go.
Yeah.
But the final battle, and then her getting the both bracelets, which was kind of like, oh, this is kind of like a lesser, he got all the stones moment. And then her doing that and just obliterating herself and fucking the loop system or the jump point system. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
But then I immediately knew where this was going. Like, I mean, immediately. And I'm like, they're going to do some stupid ass mechanic that she can only close it from the other side. And while it happened, I was like, this is dumb, because there's literally nothing that she was doing that I was like, you could just do this from the other side. Just do it from the other side. But she purposely went to that side. And when everyone was like, no, come back. And Miss Marvel was, or I'm sorry, Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel was flying the slowest she's ever flown ever. And Monica was saying, I knew this from the beginning. I was like, fuck you. I don't care. I knew you were going to do this, and it's lame. Yeah. And they did it. I did not expect this to be, and I still don't think this is the connecting tissue any more than the stuff we saw in Doctor Strange. But I did not expect her to wake up in a X-Men hospital or whatever
the X-Men
she was at. Yeah, is that where she was? I mean, I guess that's where she could be. But
I assume so. Because they showed the door that you've seen in the X-Men movies, and
that's true.
Beast is going to report to Charles.
And Maria Rambeau is dressed as, is it Photon?
Yeah,
is that Photon. What she was dressed as? Yeah.
Well, no, she is Photon. Like that's her code name to the X-Men.
Sure.
Because he calls her that. So yeah, I think playing into the multiverse, like I'm glad it did, because this is outside of Loki, this is the first thing in this phase this year that has really played with the multiverse of it all. Because I'm not counting. Well, I guess Kang and Ant-Man did. I forget about Ant-Man a lot. But I feel like this is the right amount of multiverse stuff, and I feel like because of the actor strike and production ceasing for all of the strikes this summer, I feel like the post-credit scene was supposed to be something Deadpool 3 related, since it ends with the X-Men universe.
And maybe that'll tie this up, because if not for Monica being in that, I would just think this is as throwaway as we got this Quicksilver instead of the other Quicksilver in WandaVision and the stuff that we saw in Doctor Strange. Like, it didn't feel like, I didn't walk out of there. I remember when I first saw Quicksilver in WandaVision, and I was like, holy shit, is this it? Is this the beginning? Is this where it all starts? And then that's not where it all starts. And then Doctor Strange happened and all that stuff, and I was just like, this is cool, but it's clearly not the gateway into what's going to come. And I didn't feel like this was either. I felt like this was throwaway than anything else.
I feel like this is something they're going to have to address this in the future. Whether that's Secret Wars or Captain Marvel 3. Because Captain Marvel does have her history with the X-Men. Like her and Rogue.
Sure.
Every
Marvel character does.
I know, but like, do you know the story between Captain Marvel and Rogue?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
and they won't do that. They won't do that. I guarantee you they won't.
They'll do something with those two characters, because at least I hope they would. But yeah, I I think it's.
Did you like Beast? Did you like how he looked? Because I thought he looked. I get what they were going for. They had to make a choice. Which Beast are we going to do? And they made a CGI version of the 90s cartoon, which we're still supposed to get X-Men 90 whatever
97.
97 in animated form. But I thought he looked so bad. And I thought the mouth wasn't matching up with Kelsey Grammer's voiceover.
It was the worst CG in this movie.
Yes.
Huh?
I was saying yes.
Yeah. It's the worst CG in this movie, but I'm here for it. Like,
are you here for it because it's Kelsey Grammer, or does that forgive it for you?
A little bit, I think. Honestly, yeah. Like, it could have been a CG Wolverine, and if it was bad, but it was played by Hugh Jackman, I'd feel the same way. I think Kelsey Grammer as Beast was such good casting and wasted in one movie.
Yes.
Just the thought of being able to bring him back to do something with that character is exciting to me. And
which I was fine with. I loved that that's the Beast we got. I just think he's not going to be... I believe there are certain X-Men characters that will survive whatever happens in Deadpool 3, and that will remain in the new... It's not going to be Kelsey Grammer. This is going to be a throwaway thing. And I think if that was the case, why not just put him in makeup? Even if it was less makeup than he had in X3, why this? This felt as bad as the CGI renderings of people from The Flash stuff at the end. You know, like they brought Nicolas Cage in, and he's starting to be more vocal about what he did and what he was made aware of before that film. This felt as bad as that.
The difference is it's one of him on screen, not 20 at once.
Sure. But again, why not just put him in basic makeup and use some CGI to make it a little better? Like I get that he's probably old and he doesn't want to go through all the makeup chair shit that he went in the past, but
I mean, was it great? No. Was it as bad as The Flash? I don't think so. It could have been a lot better, but I think for a post-credit scene, they weren't going to throw the money at it. I'm sure that they probably wanted to do more with it, but with the strikes, and I wouldn't be surprised if they were like, "Hey, Mr. Grammer, I feel like everything's about to shut down. Can we get you to record these lines, and we're going to have our CG people work on it as the strikes go on?" Like, I feel like that's what happened. But the X-Men in the MCU, which is something they teased in Ms. Marvel, we're getting closer. We're getting closer.
We're getting
closer. So,
but I do agree that it was probably something they tacked on at the end. It was the worst CGI in the movie. They'd already put apparently $220 million into this film, and there were just times when like Captain Marvel would be landing, and it looked like a paper cutout of her character that just kind of plopped down on a surface, and I was just like, that doesn't look good. There's a lot of little things like that in the finale of this film that I was like, that's what I was talking about in the final third, it falling apart for me.
And there's definitely a lot of reason. These are all the reasons that the Marvel special effects workers are unionizing. So
of course.
So that they can not have to work ridiculous hours for little pay to put out a lackluster product. Like, I feel like...
Actually... Yeah, and money isn't covering it, because I just said 220 million because that's what Forbes said. Screen Rant from 5 days ago says the budget was 270 million. Can you and Wikipedia, which I know can't be trusted, is saying 274.8 million. I don't understand how a 220 to 270 million movie could not look amazing. Like, go back 10 years from now. Just 10, not 20, 10 years. And you would be like, there's no way that isn't going to be the most amazing fucking visual experience you've ever seen. And hate James Cameron as much as you want, but he built a relationship with Weta. and he might make expensive movies, but they look incredible.
Yeah.
And the way Disney, not just Disney, but the way Disney and these other studios are treating their people and farming it out to, that's why the credits are so long, because they farm it out to everybody and their grandchild, and they still don't take care of those, and they still give them crazy expectations. This is the result.
Yeah.
So,
and
yeah.
I am hoping that going forward things will change. Like, I feel like the fact that Marvel is very quick to delay things now, especially with the strikes. Like, yes, there are things that need shot yet, but things that have finished production are being delayed too. Like Captain America got delayed.
New World Order or whatever it is.
That got pushed back.
Well, you would hope.
Yeah.
You would hope, but I feel like this is a deja vu conversation that we had around the floating head stuff in Love and Thunder and other, bad effects from a couple years ago.
I don't even think the Beast was as bad as the floating head in Love and Thunder.
I don't think it was, but that and other things in this film, when I see it on the big screen, not on my phone, it's a little more jarring, and it does make me, I still have yet to miss a Marvel film on the big screen. And it used to be appointment viewing for a lot of people. And, it might, I don't think it's just Brie Larson. I don't think it's just Captain Marvel. I think people are starting to think, why not just wait until it lands on Disney Plus?
And I think that's part of, like, there were 3 big Marvel movies this year. It was The Marvels, Ant-Man, Quantumania, and Guardians of the Galaxy. And I think I'm pretty sure Guardians of the Galaxy is the biggest moneymaker of them all.
Sure.
All 3
and
are sequels.
And do you think that was because of Marvel, or do you think that was because of James Gunn's exit?
I think that's just because of the success of the first 2 and the connection everyone has with those characters.
Yeah, but those movies feel... Go ahead.
You had 2 films with those characters, plus Infinity War and Endgame with Rocket. And that movie's a Rocket movie for sure. Ant-Man, you had Ant-Man and Quantumania, a little bit of Civil War, a little bit of Endgame, but not too much with the other characters in that, but outside of Ant-Man. In this, this is the first time since Captain Marvel that Brie Larson's had actual screen time.
Yeah.
And I think
that points to.
Yeah. No,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I keep on cutting you off. I apologize.
It's okay.
I think that points to a bigger issue with Marvel, because if you think back to the biggest hits of Marvel, they all one of the things that they all had in common is that people got excited for the people that were making that. The Iron Man movies. Who directed the first 2 Iron Man movies?
Jon Favreau.
Jon Favreau. And people were like, Jon Favreau's got it right. After the whole Buffy director Joss Whedon controversy, the Russo brothers came on the scene, and then people got excited again. Oh shit! Now the Russo brothers are doing the Avengers, not just one Captain America movie. It's the Russo brothers. Let's get excited. And again, Guardians of the Galaxy, I feel like more people were confident that film was going to be amazing, not because it's a Guardians of the Galaxy film or because it's a Marvel film, but because James Gunn has invested so much into that trilogy. So I feel like those are the reasons why certain films did so well in Marvel, and we've just gotten so diluted. And Taika Waititi could have been the next person on that list, but instead they kind of let him go a little too far off the edge. Yeah. But I feel like that's what Marvel is missing right now, is creators that people can get, storytellers and people running the ship that the average fan is excited about, not just the actor, but oh my gosh, if they're making this movie, it's going to be great,
Yeah, no, I think consistency with the characters and the storytellers behind them.
Yeah.
Does play a part, because some of the strongest stories that we've gotten from Marvel have been when you have the Russo brothers setting up what the next Captain America movie is going to be, or what the next Avengers movie is going to be, or Favreau with Iron Man and keeping that tone and helping build this universe. And and
but yeah,
James Gunn finishing out the trilogy. So
going back to this film, I thought it was fun. It ended with that X-Men tease. It ended with another tease of Miss Marvel being a little more confident with her sexy tech pad and meeting up with little Miss Hawkeye.
Yep.
And I thought that was fun. She kind of did a nod to old school Nick Fury sitting in the dark, and I kind of liked that. I thought that was a fun scene, But yeah, I think overall this film was fun, and I didn't walk out of it pissed. And I know that's a low bar for Marvel these days, but that's the bar that's currently set, and I gotta recognize the small but achievement that it was. So
I'm happy with this movie. I may go see it again in theaters before it hits Disney Plus. It all depends on the circumstances. So, well, it looks like we're out of time to talk about Loki in this episode, so we're gonna save that for the next one. So that does it for our review of the Marvels. Thank you for tuning in to Brilliant But Lazy. We are a Victims and Villains podcast. You can check out victimsandvillains.net for all your mental health resources, events, and movie reviews and all of that, and a whole bunch of other shows from Victims and Villains. You can follow Victims and Villains on Facebook, Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch these episodes as well. Until next time, for Brilliant But Lazy, I'm Alan.
I'm Josh.
And in the words of Dr. Hank McCoy, wishing you good mental health.